season to plant bulbs. And no matter what type of bulb you might be planting, there's a lot of similarities to know about bulbs when you're speaking in general terms. And today we're going to go over some of those. First of all, a lot of times when you hear about planting spring bulbs, you might hear about top dressing with bone meal. Bone meal is a great phosphorus fertilizer, and this helps with root stimulation and root growth. Really, this is what you're wanting to promote through the winter time. That's why we plant bulbs in the fall, is so that they'll have that opportunity to establish themselves. Now, how do we plant those? Well, there's a few tools that you might look at getting. And here we have a 4-inch bulb planter, and you simply push this down into the ground and spin it and pull it out, and it helps pull some of that soil out so that you can easily place your bulb in that hole. We also have a dibble here. It's basically just a spike that you stab into the ground, and you can kind of work it around to make that hole bigger. Or you have your hand trowel. Now, a lot of hand trowels anymore are made with a marker on here so you can see how deep you're burying your bulb. So how deep should you bury your bulbs? That's a pretty common question that we get a lot of times. It depends really on the size of the bulbs. And now if you have daffodils, let's say this is about a 2-inch bulb, you're going to plant most bulbs in general 2 to 3 times the diameter of the bulb. So if this is 2 inches, you're going to plant this about 4 to 6 inches deep in the ground. Now, and a crocus is much smaller. It's only about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch. So you're going to plant this about 2 inches to 3 inches deep in the ground. So that kind of gives you a little idea. Of course, most bulbs, when you buy them, they probably have recommendations, and you should check those because there are some exceptions to the rule, such as stem rooting lilies. They like to be planted much deeper, and Madonna lilies, they actually like to be planted just below the soil surface. So here you can see we have our bulb, and most of them have roots coming out from one end and a point on the other end. The flat part where the roots are coming from, this is known as the basal plate. And this is the growing point of a bulb where you have your roots coming from the bottom, and this bulb tissue is actually vegetative tissue. So this is where your leaves and your flowers are going to come from. You always want to make sure that you're planting this in the right direction, so roots go down and the point goes up in the hole. Now, a lot of times when you're looking at bulbs, they'll offer different sizes, and you might find the exact same daffodil, but it be priced differently, and that's usually because of the size of the bulb that you're purchasing. Typically, when we're talking about bulbs, the bigger the bulb, the more flower you're going to get out of that bulb. The smaller the bulb, the less flower, either the size of the flower or the number of flowers you're going to get out of that bulb. So if you want to spend the extra money to get more of a bouquet, then that's up to you. Now, when we're talking about tulips, they're often categorized by their bloom time. You might hear early single, mid-season, Darwin, or single late or double late. Typically in Oklahoma, you want to get the mid-season or the Darwin or the single late. Those tend to be the ones that do the best with our spring when it arrives. You can do the earlier ones, but you never know how long winter's going to hold on, and sometimes that can affect your display. It just means that they're going to bloom sooner, and so if we have a heavy rainstorm or a snowstorm, you might lose your blooms sooner. The other thing is when you're looking at bulbs, you want to make sure that they are in good condition. If there's any large lacerations on them, that could be a problem with them developing rot or diseases later on. The other thing is you kind of want to squeeze them and make sure that they're firm. They shouldn't be soft or mushy. If you've had some left over and you've had them in your garage or something and they're soft and mushy, or they're so dehydrated, they're not going to have enough energy to produce a plant for you next year. Typically when we're buying spring bulbs, you might also hear about chilling those bulbs, or you can possibly order pre-chilled bulbs. Here in Oklahoma, we don't usually need to buy pre-chilled bulbs because our winters get cold enough. Bulbs typically need 18 weeks of 35 to 50 degrees in order to develop that flower. It's actually a biochemical response in that bulb that initiates that flower development. So if we plant them in the fall, it goes through the winter, it gets that chilling naturally, and then that's what causes them to bloom in the springtime. Not all bulbs need to be chilled. You're probably familiar with the amaryllis and some tropical narcissus such as the paper whites. These don't actually need to be chilled, and this is why you see them often sold around Christmas time as Christmas gifts, because you can put those into a pot and they will soon develop that flower. Bulbs are readily available this time of the year in a lot of your garden centers, and I would highly suggest you use them. They're great for outside in the garden in the spring or in your home at Christmas time.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.